Welcome once again to another episode of B&B Canucks Hockey Talk. I'm your host, Aaron Bloxel, with my co-host, Mr. Matt Balzer. Matt, good evening. All-Star break is upon us. Tonight, skills competition. Tomorrow, the Alien gets to participate with the best of the best around the league. And it was kind of funny to watch him yesterday and how many times he gave the alien death stare to the reporters that were asking him silly questions. But how excited should he be right now, and how much do you think this is going to help his game?
Yeah, so I think like the best thing is just being around the star players and just seeing the little things. And I think the players he was most excited to see were the other Swedish players there. So there have already been a few picks there with Erik Karlsson, and as us Canuck fans, we're gonna dream of recruiting Karlsson for next year. But yeah, it's really nice because it's like if you look at Besser last year and then Horvat the year before, it's nice having our young players each year gain around the rest of the star players in the NHL and gain around their minds. Like the All-Star weekend, for me, it's still like it doesn't really mean much to me. But for younger players to go gain around to see the other stars, it's got to be something pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I think it's a great learning experience. Even tonight in the All-Star skills competition, he gets to see the skill level, and I think it'll motivate him and help push him even further. Because he's that type of person. But as he participates this weekend, and the rest of the Canucks have the week off until next Saturday, a lot of the single guys, I saw Goldobin, Besser, Hutton, Stetcher, Virtanen, they're all down in Mexico. And, of course, they end up at the same resort as some of the Winnipeg Jet players. So hopefully they don't have too much fun and they don't get too – out of shape, if you know what I'm talking about. So, but I know you've got some pet peeves on your shoulder.
Yeah.
As the last few games for the Canucks, some really slow starts against Buffalo, Detroit, and then again against Carolina. I mean, the Carolina game, forever in the first period, they only had 2 shots on net. Second period, they start out great, and then the absolute floor falls out from under them. They finally played a team that got in hard on them on the forecheck. And I've been hearing rumors that Carolina exposed how to play against the Canucks, and is potentially a pattern that we're going to start seeing with how teams are going to play them. But they expose the weaknesses there, and I know a couple of them are your pet peeves, so I'll let you go off for the Matt's minute.
Yeah, so the big thing here is the Canucks defense, and that's starting with Derek Pouliot and Erik Gudbranson. Man, these guys are just awful to watch. Like you thought Ben Hutton playing with Erik Gudbranson was bad. Well, welcome to Derek Pouliot and Erik Gudbranson.
Can Quinn Hughes hurry up and get here?
I know, sheesh. Yeah, Erik Gudbranson is now a -20 on the season, which is third worst in the NHL. Only Michael Matheson and Jonathan Huberdeau have a worse plus-minus than Erik Gudbranson. Gudbranson this month, for the month of January, at even strength, the Canucks have been outscored 12-5 with him on the ice, and that's mostly him playing about like 13 to 14 minutes a game now, as Green finally promoted Troy Stetcher into the top 4 this month, which is great. And with his assist last game against Carolina, he has 15 points on the year, all at even strength, which puts him in the top 50 in NHL defenseman scoring for even strength scoring. So a very underrated season right now for Troy Stetcher, as he's probably one of the brightest spots along with Ben Hutton this year on our back end.
Well, maybe those guys had to play with Gudbranson and Pouliot to help mask their weaknesses.
Oh man, but yeah, it's just brutal. It's just like you look at Pouliot, it's just like you put a little bit of pressure. Like the Carolina second goal, he has all like these clearing attempts, and then what does he do? He just fires it blindly up the boards, right to Dougie Hamilton. And the next thing you know, it's in the back of the net. And then if you start like with the Canucks slow starts of late, like they haven't played their best hockey of late. And if it hasn't been like for some strong goaltending from the one game from Demko and Markstrom, you're looking at a totally different record here. Like they went 3-1-2 on this home stretch, which is really good with not being able to play their best hockey. But you would think with the slow starts and all the rest time, no travel, that they wouldn't have like any issues like that. But it's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, this defense, like they brought the same 6 guys back as last year, and then if you throw in Biega, that's 7. How long until some of these guys down in Utica finally get a chance? Because like you can't tell me that Luke Shen and like even Evan McEnany, who's actually had a really good year, 23 points in 43 games down in Utica this year, don't deserve at least a look at some time, or at least one of these guys gets a healthy scratch. Like I know like Brandson's part of like that Louis Eriksson sort of like that little crew that no matter what they do, they can't get healthy scratch for one game because of the amount of money they make. But yeah, it's just like you look at the start of the season and Benny's just like the guys that deserve to play are going to get in the lineup, and if you don't if you don't perform, then you're going to get moved or something like that. But for some specific reasons, it only involves the young guys. Like you got like Jake Virtanen and Godolin, which people bring up like, oh, they aren't scoring or whatever. But then you look at Louis Eriksson and Brandon Sutter and all these other guys that you need to help produce some offense as well, and they're struggling more than these other guys offensively. But yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
In fairness to Louis Eriksson, he scored a big goal against Buffalo.
Oh man.
Josh Levo has played fantastic. I think he's been their best forward. Well, maybe not their best forward, but he's definitely been noticeable in the last few games. Do you think he's finally hitting his stride with Vancouver?
Yeah. So I like him. I think as like a third liner who can move up your lineup if you have injuries, sort of like that. But yeah, I've really liked his skill the last couple of games, especially that Buffalo game. He was buzzing really good. But yeah, so like I know his offensive numbers have tailored off a little bit, but he had the goal against Carolina, a nice tip off Stetcher's pass. But yeah,
could have easily had 3 goals against Carolina with some of the chances in the high slot he had.
Yeah, and then he had that nice breakaway attempt against Allmark in the third period there against Buffalo. But yeah, I've really enjoyed him. I think like as a third line player, I'd really like to see him as a fixture there.
Let's talk about you were telling me before we went on the show about some underlying stats about Brandon Sutter. Is he somebody you want to see the Canucks move on at the trade deadline?
Yeah, I would like to see him moved out. He has only 1 assist on the season, 5 points in 21 games. That 1 assist came opening night, and that's thanks to Jeff Patterson through the media, just to credit him. But the thing is here, with the 1 assist on opening night, with the amount of ice time that he plays, around the 17-minute mark per game, he's the only guy in the NHL playing that amount of ice time that only has 1 assist on the season. And for the amount of money that he's making, over $4 million, you got to chip in a little bit more offensively. Like, assists aren't like terribly hard to come by, especially with the amount of ice time you're getting. Like, I know that Green, well, he leans on him defensively a little bit more, but he's known for being like at least a decent two-way guy. But when passing isn't your strongest strong suit for him, you got to find a way to pick up some points here and there.
Yeah, for me, my argument against that, the reason I like Sutter, I don't think he needs to put up points. I mean, he's chipping in with a few goals here and there. But for me, you need some of those guys to round out a team, somebody that can shut down the other team's top line. He's really relied on heavily. I'm surprised he's relied on more than Beagle for some of the more important faceoffs on the right side. I thought Beagle would have taken that over from him a little bit, but and it's kind of neat to be able to put them both out on the ice in the last few minutes of a game that you have a lead on that side, rather than having to play Horvat so much and have him relied on for so many faceoffs. But it's an interesting problem that you're bringing up, because this is the first time in a while the Canucks have had 4 centers. But I guess with Sutter's contract, I believe, is it up at the end of this year or next year? I think it's next year.
Yeah, he's got a few more years.
Yeah, he's got a few more years, but he might be a guy that the Canucks could move for some potential decent return here at the trade deadline, because he could help a potential playoff team for a good Stanley Cup run. And I can see, I think, it's always good as a rebuilding team to look at components like that could bring you some really good value in return. So for me, if the Canucks can get something back in return that's really decent value, I don't mind seeing Sutter move, because that way you still have Beagle, Pettersson, and Horvat. It gives a chance for Adam Gaudette to potentially come into the lineup, although they're going to give that spot to Marcus Granlund. That's another story. But they do have guys like Granlund, like Sutter, like who else in the lineup am I going to pick on here? Schaller. These are kind of some of the guys that they could move. They might not get much value back for those other guys mentioned, but I think Sutter you could definitely get some value from. So what else you got for us today on the Canucks?
Yeah, so I'd like to bring up something about like Horvat's line mates, and this is also a thing with getting Jake Virtanen going. Once again, like he's in that big drought, but the thing is he's been playing with Sutter a lot of late, and with playing more of a defensive style for his line, and with Sutter not being able to produce as much offense right now, I think he needs to get a look with Bo Horvat, because when you got Horvat playing with guys like Marcus Granlund, just about every night, or Antoine Roussel, who's been decent but not like a guy that you want in your top six, give Virtanen somebody to play with offensively to try to get things going, and give him a couple weeks just to play with him, because if you're having Besser with Pettersson, you got to have somebody to play with Virtanen, and I think Jason Bockford had like a good thing like on like Michael Furlan, and comparing him to Jake Virtanen, like on if the Canucks with a potential trade, like he was bringing up like Furlan's numbers, like Virtanen's 22 right now, he had 11 goals. When Furlan was 22, he had just played 26 games and had 2 goals. And then the following year, 23, he had 4 goals in 71 games. And if you look at this season, Furlan has 13 goals in 41 games, and Jake has 11 goals in 51. So there isn't much of a difference. It's just that if you really want to develop Virtanen and get him into like that power forward where you can get 20 goals, maybe get 50 points a year, somewhere around there, I think they really got to put him in a spot where he can succeed. I know he's been struggling really badly of late to get that puck in the net. But yeah, you got to give him some line mates that will help him at least offensively try to get that puck in the net.
Well, and I think the nice thing about Virtanen and Horvat is they complement each other with the incredible speed that they have. And you can see it on the breakout when they're working together, because for a lot of the times when I see Horvat come out, his line mates can't keep up with him, whether it's Louis Eriksson, Marcus Granlund, even Antoine Roussel sometimes. They can't really keep up to that speed, whereas Virtanen's right there stride for stride with him. It just seems those guys have always had chemistry since Virtanen came into the league. And I think I also think that it'd be helpful to get Jake going. But, yeah, so let's just wrap this up. I'll give you the final word before we end today's show.
All right, yeah, so just a couple more stats. Louis Eriksson only has 1 credited hit for the entire year. 1 games, he has 1 hit credited. So it boggles the mind. Pettersson, by the way, has 23 hits on the year. That's another great stat by Jason Bockford throwing out.
And one was on the Carolina goalie the other night.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one thing. The other thing I'll bring up, Nikolai Goldobin, with all the defensive struggles the Canucks have been having the past couple of games, when will goalie get back in the lineup? Like, you got to give a guy like a shot sooner or later here. And then just going down to the minors, just an update. Adam Gaudette now up to 11 points in 10 games. Zach McEwen, who we will still try to pump his tires to get him up to 16 goals, 36 points in 44 games. And then if we're going down to Quinn Hughes, he's at 22 points in 20 games. And Tyler Madden, 8 goals, 20 points in 18 games. He had a nice OT winner, I believe, last weekend where he did the canoe celebration. I forget if we brought that up.
We brought that up. Also, Jet Wu
Mm.
Playing some great hockey in the dub right now. Canucks second round pick from last year. I believe he's 6th overall in defensive scoring.
Yeah, 10 goals, 39 points in 40 games.
Fantastic. And that's coming from a guy that's supposedly a checker. So that's, to me, that's great that he's developing. He's big, strong kid who loves to hit. And, if his offensive game's developing like that this year, it'll be fantastic to see him at training camp next year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's about all I have. I think the highlights will be pretty low this weekend just because I don't care much for the All-Star game. So if something crazy happens or something, I might post it. But other than that, I think it should be a pretty quiet weekend highlight-wise. And then getting back into the next week, a bunch of NHL teams, I think up to like 21 teams are still on their bye weeks. So there's about only 2 or 3 games a week this week until the weekend.
Yeah, so we may or may not have episodes. We'll let you know, and stay tuned on our Facebook page and YouTube channel to find out. So for Aaron and Matt, have a fantastic evening and a great weekend. Enjoy the All-Star festivities from the SAP Center there in San Jose, California. And we will see you guys all next week.